Hey folks, Chiori's coming around soon, and I think she's got more value than you'd expect. So today, I'll be giving Chiori the credit where credit is due, by giving you all a guide on how to build and play Chiori. Now, Chiori is a Geo sub-DPS who focuses on her skill damage while having a decently hard-hitting burst. Her normal attacks, just as a standalone ability, are just 4 regular physical strikes. Nothing much to see here. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of Chiori's kit, her elemental skill. She dashes forward, and when the dash ends, she summons a silly little doll. After this, she is going to slash her blade upwards, doing AoE geo damage to close-by enemies. This scales on both her attack and defense, since Chiori has split scaling. Because of course she does. She also has a hold, where you can aim and throw her skill, kinda like Kuching or Alhaitham. The Goofy doll has some of its own properties. It's going to hit nearby enemies every 3.6 seconds, dealing AoE geo damage based on Chiori's attack and defense again. While the doll is active, if you create a geo construct, Chiori will summon a second one. You can only generate 1 extra doll, and the duration of the dolls are counted independently, each lasting for 17 seconds. And then for Chiori's burst. She cuts through your yapping and slices your enemies, dealing AoE geo damage, which scales on both her attack and her defense. Pretty simple, but it can hit pretty hard if you build for it. Her Ascension 1 passive is pretty interesting. She'll gain different effects based on what you do after you do her skill. If you cast your skill again, you get the Tapestry effect, but if you normal attack, you get the Tailoring effect. The Tapestry effect will do the following. You're going to switch to your next character, so the one after Chiori. This means that your party composition actually matters, so I hope you're not a maniac who constructs teams in the most vile way possible. All of your teammates will gain a special effect, and when your on-field character does a normal charge or plunging attack, the Goofy doll is going to do a coordinated attack, which does 100% of the skill's upward sweep damage. So this is going to do more damage than the regular doll hit. This effect lasts for 8 seconds, and you can only do this coordinated attack twice. Now, if you normal attack, it's going to be a lot simpler. You're just going to get 5 seconds of Geo Infusion, so you can use her as a little bit of a DPS. Now for Ascension 4, it's a lot more basic. You get 20% Geo damage bonus whenever a teammate summons a construct. So, yeah, that's just playing into the construct gimmick more. As for her talent priority, it's pretty simple if you ask me. Most of her damage is going to be centered around her skill, so level that first. And then second off, you have the burst. The normals are not going to be that useful unless you want to play a DPS Chiori playstyle, so I would not level the normal attacks. Now for her weapons, you're going to be a bit starved for options. So let's get into why that is. R1 Uraku Misugiri is going to be her best in slot, and it's not even close. If you want Chiori to do a lot of meaningful damage, you should definitely pick up this weapon. It has a lot of crit damage, and the passive works perfectly with Chiori's kit. Naturally, it's her signature weapon after all. It trumps out all her other weapons by a pretty large margin, so if you really do care about Chiori, pick this weapon up. R5 Wolfang does fall behind Uraku by quite a bit, but it's still her second best in slot. Some good crit here, and it will suffice having a good passive. Main drawback is you need to be on field for the passive to build up. And this weapon is also expensive, as it is with an R5 Battle Pass weapon. I don't know if you're willing to drop $50 to just R5 this weapon for your Chiori, but hey, it's there if you already have it. R5 Cinnabar Spindle will also be pretty nice on Chiori. Because the entire kit scales off of defense, Cinnabar Spindle is going to be very good. But because she also scales off attack, the low base attack is quite unfortunate. This weapon is also only owned by those who are around to see the goddamn dinosaurs go extinct. But it is a good free-to-play option, if you have it. R1 Primordial Jade Cutter will also work pretty well, but it's mainly there's a big stat stick. So, yeah, it's pretty good, but it's not really a standout choice. I would not pull this weapon purely for your Chiori, since it is about 20% worse than her signature weapon. But if you already have it, then yeah, it's pretty usable. R1 Mist Splitter is quite a good choice as well, especially if you want to play Chiori as an on-field DPS with a Geo Infusion. It falls off more with an off-field Chiori, so if you have it on hand, just try it. R1 Splendor is generally not really worth considering, but if you want to play Chiori with Navi and Furina, and this weapon is her second best in the slot. Also, it's a total power move to use Splendor on your Chiori instead of your Furina when you're using both on the same team. But hey, it's your choice. R1 Foliar Incision does actually work on Chiori, and it's not completely bricked, since the stats are pretty high on it, giving the highest crit value of any sword. Aside from that, do not pull this for just Chiori. If you're gonna get a 5-star, again, get her signature, for the love of God. If you want an F2P option that is not Cinnabar Spindle, your best bet's going to be R5 Harbinger of Dawn. So, if you're playing the player primarily off-field, keeping the passive active should not be a difficult task. But it is still a lot worse than her signature, but at least it's cheap and can perform on a similar level to her other 5-star alternatives, which is impressive. Festering Desire will be okay in a Navia team as well, which is pretty cool, since she is going to require more energy in this team than in a Mono Geo team. Again, it's an event weapon that you can't get anymore, but it's there, and even if you have Festering Desire, you probably have Cinnabar Spindle, which is just better. Other options include Blackcliff, Black Sword, Summit Shaper, and the Pipe. Don't use Pipe. I swear to God. So, here is the ranking of her weapons to decide which you want to use. If you've been enjoying the video so far, leave a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot. But with that out of the way, let's get to her artifacts. Chiori has a bunch of artifact choices that you can go for. 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams is going to be her best set across all playstyles. It provides her with a lot of that juicy defense that she scales off of, as well as a bit of geo damage bonus. You can strongbox it as well, so it's pretty accessible. But if you don't want to farm it, and you don't want to touch the strongbox or the 10-foot pole, don't worry, because 4-piece Golden Troop provides nearly the same damage across almost all of her playstyles. It's a bit worse for on-field, losing to Husk by about 6%, but for a most optimal playstyle, which is Mono Geo, it's only 2% worse. So it's very strong for Chiori's skill damage, as her dulls are, after all, skill damage. It's also very resin efficient, because Marechaussee is one of the best sets in the game. 4-piece Nighttime Whispers is kind of bad for her best playstyle and for the on-field playstyle, because you're not going to get any crystallized shards in a Geo team. It also has uptime issues, so it's going to lose to Husk by more than 10%. But if you play her in a Navia team and you manage to get one of the crystallized shards, that's only 8% worse than Husk. So it's worth sticking on there if you've already been farming the domain for Navia and you have very good substats. For 2-piece combinations, you can go with Geo, Defense, and Attack combined in different ways, with Geo and Defense being her strongest 2-piece and Double Attack being the worst. As for which main stats to use, it's incredibly simple. Go for a Defense Sands, Geo Damage Goblet, and a Crit Circlet. An Attack Sands is an okay placeholder if you have good stats, but ultimately you want to get working towards that defense. For your stats, it's not that difficult. You're going to want Crit, Defense, Attack, and some ER on your substats. Get a 1-to-2 ratio for your crit, with over 2100 defense being a good place to aim for. Around 140 and 150% energy recharge should be fine in most teams, but in Mono Geo you can get away with 110%. Here's a sheet ranking Chiori's artifact options. Now, since Chiori is in fact a sub-DPS, she's going to be slotted into a various amount of teams that are going to appreciate her damage. Since her kit focuses on Geo constructs, she'll be mostly tied to Geo-based teams. The team that synergizes the best with her kit is going to be an Itto Mono Geo team. She serves the team on its head by giving you a character to play that isn't fucking Albedo. In these teams, she is going to work very well with the likes of Zhongli, Albedo, and Itto, who produces his Ushi, of course. Anyone that produces a Geo construct, Chiori will like. This includes Geo MC, but then I'm gonna have to ask you the question of why did you level your main character? Know that Chiori's own goofy dolls don't count as a Geo construct, so you want other constructs in the team. A nice example would be Itto, Zhongli, Chiori, and Goro. Otherwise, you can play her in a Navia team. At base, she is a negligent increase, but with Constellation investment, she can beat out other Geo options which pair with Navia by a significant margin. She can also be on-field during the downtime in these teams if you want her to be. You generally won't be having any Geo constructs in this team, but it's still playable. Just so you know, Chiori doesn't need constructs to be usable. She's still a sizable increase over Albedo even without them. A nice example team would be Navia, Chiori, Bennett, and Furina. On-field DPS Chiori is an interesting one. In these teams, Chiori will be the main star of the show, and you'll always be proccing the tailoring effect from her Ascension 1 for the Geo infusion. You're going to want to play her with buffers that are going to increase her own damage, so I'm going to recommend Chiori, Zhongli, Goro, and Albedo. Basically just the Itto team, but you put Chiori there instead of Itto. It's also pretty fast rotation, so if you like Tighnari, you're probably going to enjoy this as well. Chiori as a DPS is going to be around the same power level as Itto, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's not optimal, but it's playable if you're interested like I am. And lastly, there's the double Geo core with Zhongli. You can fit this combo damn near anywhere. Hu Tao, Lenny, Yoimiya, Neuvillette kind of, and also even Xiao. If you have 2 empty slots, you can throw these bad boys in there for some pretty good off-field damage. Now, let's get into Chiori's Constellations. She has some of the best constellations I have seen out of any character, and they make her a lot stronger. Her C1 is going to increase the AoE of her doll by 50%, which means she's going to be a lot more adept in AoE scenarios. But here's the interesting part. If there's a Geo team member other than Chiori, her skill is going to get the second doll just without needing a construct, and her Ascension 4 also gets triggered. A very solid constellation because it allows Navia to be your second Geo while still getting Chiori's impressive damage. Her C2 literally doubles her performance in a Navia team alongside her C1. Whale bait, I'm calling it. For 10 seconds after using Chiori's burst, a different kind of goofy doll will be summoned every 3 seconds. This guy's called Kino. Kino will attack nearby enemies, dealing AoE Geo damage equal to 170% of the original doll's damage. Damage dealt this way is considered skill damage, so the likes of 4-piece Golden Troop will still buff it. Kino leaves the field after 1 attack or lasting 3 seconds. This C2 is capable of spawning 4 Kinos in total. Her C3 is going to improve her skill damage by 3 levels. Pretty cool considering that the point of her skill is to do a lot of damage. C4 does something pretty alright as well. For 8 seconds after you trigger her Ascension 1, Kino is back again. This time being spawned by doing a normal charge or plunging attack on a teammate. Kino can be triggered this way 3 times. Now for her C5. It's going to increase the talent level of her burst by 3. It's not that major, but still a damage increase. And now it's time for her C6. After you trigger Chiori's A1, Chiori's skill cooldown will be decreased by 12 seconds. Also, Chiori's normal attacks will have their damage increased by 230% of Chiori's defense. A pretty damn strong C6. It gives defense a ton more value on Chiori as if it didn't have that already, and turns her into a damage-dealing machine. While not on the highest level of C6s, it's definitely still good for turning Chiori into Navia 2. Navia, my beloved. So now that you know all of Chiori's ins and outs, I hope you all understand why she's better than you might think. Even without constructs, Chiori is a great albedo upgrade, and is going to be the premier choice for Geo sub DPS. I think the problem with Chiori is more that there isn't a ton of team comps demanding this type of character. Her damage output and kit design is pretty well fine-tuned, and although I wish she could have been stronger, I think that what we did get is not as bad as a lot of people are saying. I especially recommend her to Itto mains. Now, excuse me as I'm going to prepare for Navia Chiori dual carry and Chiori on-field DPS. Good luck on your Chiori pulls if you're planning to pull for her, and that'll be all from me. Peace.